Hey everyone! A few people have asked me to show some process videos on how I sketch and how I doodle, and so I figured, okay, I might as well give it a try. I've never done that before, and it was a bit nerve-wracking to work with a screen cam, so I originally decided to do a very complex drawing with a lot of details and a lot of explanations and such, but that didn't really work out because I don't know, I think it was nerves. So in the end, I decided to simply just go with it and doodle around a bit and see what happened, and this is the result. So the first one is a very dramatic pose with a lot of wind and movement going on, and that will generally show you how much I actually alter my drawings when I'm not happy with them in the beginning. The second one is a bit more static, just a sitting pose. Yeah, very simple sketches in general, but hopefully you will, I don't know, get some inspiration for your own pieces, or at least you'll get to see how I normally work. And of course this is not really a tutorial on how to draw anything, because I don't think really it's my place, but I can show you the things I consider when I draw. So this is the first sketch, and as you can see I started with the head. That's how I normally go about it, and try to add as much movement to the pose as possible. So no really fine lines or anything, just a lot of sketchy lines. I think it's really important to get the pose right, or at least the movement right, and not focus as much on the anatomy in the first part of the drawing. And as you'll see, I'll start altering first the head and then the body of the figure. That is actually one of the main reasons why it's so important to keep practicing. It's not just about getting the anatomy right, it's also about not getting too attached to your drawing, to know that you can recreate very basic shapes pretty fast, so that if you do decide to redraw it, it won't be such a big problem for you. So you can see I altered the pose, the head. Altering a head is always a great idea if you feel you're a bit stuck, because that can generally change the whole feel of the drawing. And I also added a fake wind machine, which is one of the oldest fantasy drawing tricks in the book, to add like a big cape to emphasize the pose, and then to give a sense of wind and movement. But then again, it can always be changed, it can always be removed and replaced with something else if the design doesn't work. So it's just to get my mind working, to get a sense of the drawing itself. And after I finished the first sketch, I add a value layer just to make sure the drawing gets more separated from the plain background. And I add a tiny bit of shading to emphasize different elements of the drawing, like the hair or the cape, or the face and such. And then I start adding clothes on a new layer on top of all that. And again, very sketchy, just very general, to give myself an idea on how a finished piece could look. And that's about it, actually. I normally, when I finish a piece like this, I'll leave it for a day or so before I decide if I want to get into more details, if I want to continue working on it, because then it's easier to spot some mistakes in the anatomy and the pose in general and alter them before doing any kind of detail work, because it's of course important not to keep going on a drawing where something basic is wrong. So this is the step where you start changing these anatomy mistakes, if you can find them, spot them in time. So for the second drawing, I thought I might do something a bit different. Again, started with the head, and then as you see immediately a bit of movement with the spine. So as you can see, very loose sketches, very loose lines. Again, no details added. And I'm not at all happy with the leg, as you'll see in a bit. I struggle a lot with legs in general, but again, unless it's a vital part of the drawing, I usually try not to get too worried about these details, and instead I try to focus on the rest of the drawing, and if I end up liking that, I can always find the incentive to go back and work on the bits and pieces that I find really difficult, like legs or hands and so on. So in general, it's just very important to get the general feel right. As you can see, not as much dramatic movement as in the other sketch. The movement is mainly in the spine here, and a bit in the hair as well, a few flowy strands of hair. And here I am struggling with the leg, struggling with when she's sitting, but again, not that important right now. A really useful tool as well is flipping the canvas a lot, especially if there's one part of the body that you struggle to work on. For instance, I find it easier to draw hands from one direction more so than the other direction, and so usually I flip the canvas if I struggle too much with a hand or a leg and so on. And of course, it's also easier to spot mistakes you make when you flip the canvas regularly. So yeah, get a hotkey for that, or a shortcut somehow, so you can flip it all the time. And again, here we are with a lot of very sketchy lines for the clothing. Nothing too defined. Again, the hands are basically just I don't know, messes. Doesn't matter, because if I don't like this drawing, I won't finish it. This is all practice. This is all to get an idea, a feel, and so on. And I'm almost done with this. Again, try not to add too much detail, and I'll let it sit for at least a day before I start working on it even more, just to make sure that I haven't missed any obvious mistakes. At the end, I normally, in most of my sketches, add a bit of background, just to bring some artificial depth into the drawing. It's usually just a box. And I do this because I can always, of course, add some more detailed background, but this just, I don't know, makes it easier to look at, and it also makes the person in front pop a bit more from the very boring grey background. And as you will see when we look at both the sketches here, you can see that the first sketch looks a bit more flat than the second one because it does not have this fake background at all. So yes, this is generally how I go about creating the first steps of my sketching process, just to see if there's anything that interests me, just to get my creativity going. And of course I will not finish all of them. Usually I finish very few of my drawings actually, because I always end up getting bored before I get that far. But I think it's extremely important, and that was really a huge part of my learning process, is to be able to discard drawings and to completely redraw poses or faces and so on if you're not happy with them, because in the end you end up using a lot of time trying to correct some mistake that could have been avoided if you simply just at the very beginning started over or altered something. So yes, this is just very quick video for two very rough sketches. Let me know if you want to see more like this or something a bit different, or if this is at all helpful to you. If you want to see this in a non-sped up way, I do stream on Picasso occasionally, and I also upload process drawings and sketches and a few finished pieces on my DeviantArt account, and I will link both of those in the description down below.